Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy, know y'all with me, let's get it,
Welcome
baby.
back to another edition
Rockin'
of
Royal,
Rockin'
Navy,
Podcast.
know you with me.
I'm your host, Sean Walker, your BYU beat writer covering all things Cougs and Big 12 for KSL.com. Thanks for joining me once again after, I'm not going to lie, a pretty good week for BYU. Back-to-back wins in Big 12 play for the first time under first-year head coach Kevin Young. The Cougs went and stormed into Boulder. Richie Saunders dropped 25 points, and BYU emerged with their first true road victory of the season against Colorado. That helped set up a little bit of confidence as BYU then came back and dropped 15 three-pointers, including 11 from distance in the second half, and an 80-52 home win over Cincinnati. That's the Cincinnati team, by the way, folks, that was picked in the top 6 of the Big 12 preseason men's basketball poll. I realize preseason is preseason; it is what it is. But it's a team that was supposed to finish ahead of BYU, picked 9th at the time. So I don't think that was a gimme win. BYU certainly showed out in that one, collecting consecutive wins in conference play for the first time under Kevin Young. So pretty impressive wins for the BYU basketball team. And you got to ask yourself if this team has potentially started to turn a little bit of a corner, maybe finding some go-to playmakers, some scoring options. Obviously, we mentioned Saunders. He's leading the team in scoring, but Yegor Demin also found his shot very well. I think Dallin Hall is settling into his role, even coming off of the bench some. And I just think that this team is maybe starting to come together in some ways. Regardless, they picked up 2 wins that they absolutely had to have. 3-game losing skid. It didn't look very good for BYU, or 3 and 4 games, excuse me. Either way, it didn't look very good. Coming off of that road loss to Utah, BYU had to win in Boulder. They got it done. In some ways, they had to win against Cincinnati, I think, especially with it being at home. Either way, they got it done. Now they face another big home contest Tuesday night against Baylor, a team that is right there with them, neck and neck, around the middle of the pack in the Big 12. And I think BYU can send another statement if they can pick up a win over the Bears and highly touted freshman VJ Edgecombe. So we'll see how that one goes. If this team wins 3 in a row, then I think it's time to talk about BYU potentially turning a corner. We'll wait and see what happens Tuesday night and how Coach Young and his program adjust from there. Obviously, but we'll keep you dialed in all basketball season like we normally do here on the podcast feed, because those weren't the only 2 wins BYU got over the weekend. The BYU football team was in attendance at that Saturday game against Cincinnati. It was part of junior day for Kalani Sitake's program, and immediately following a round of just dozens of official visits the BYU was hosting starting Friday and into Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and then into Sunday night, the Cougars picked up 2 big commitments from a couple of defensive backs out of the class of 2025. Jordyn Criss, a cornerback out of Seguin High School in Arlington, Texas. That's the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area. Jordan's been he's had a little bit of a BYU lean for a while, but he solidified his commitment to the Cougars over Bowling Green, East Texas A&M, Lamar, Southern Utah, and Texas State, among others. Wildly under-recruited, probably underrated 3-star talent out of the DFW. I think this is a really nice pickup for BYU. Shows a lot of athleticism, maybe a little bit raw, could be a little bit undersized at times, but BYU's made pretty good work in that cornerback room with quote-unquote undersized or underrated talent under assistant coach Gennaro Guilford, and I expect the same out of Jordyn Criss. I think this could be a potential diamond in the rough for BYU. The other defensive back was a local product out of Lone Peak High School. Landan Goff helped the Knights make a run to the 6A semifinals this year. Really nice player. I got the chance to watch him a couple of times. Had offers from Idaho State, Navy, Utah Tech, in addition to BYU. But BYU's been on his radar for a long time. He was pretty open to me several times. I talked to him in particular after Lone Peak upset Corner Canyon. Remember when Corner Canyon was ranked at the top 25 in the country, and Landan said, "Yeah, BYU's sort of been in there," but he finally solidified his commitment to the Cougs Sunday night after a senior season when he totaled 55 tackles, 44 of them solo stops with 2 tackles for loss in 14 games, playing mostly safety, moonlighted a little bit on special teams, kick return and punt return, and a little bit of kind of some nickel package stuff. Also had 7 interceptions on the year, 5 passes defended, a couple of caused fumbles in there. So he's a playmaker, creates a lot of havoc in that backfield, and I think that Landon Goff will be a very good fit in Jay Hill's defense moving forward at BYU. He's also, to some extent, a little bit of a legacy product. Obviously, grew up right down the road in that Alpine Highland American Fork area of Utah County. Lone Peak High School, as we mentioned, strong legacy ties to the Cougs. And his sister Lexi is a junior distance runner on the BYU track and field team. So the two of them actually got to connect a little bit while he was on his official visit at BYU, which I think is pretty cool. I'm sure they connect plenty. But she's a very accomplished athlete herself, former 6A 4x400 meter state champion with the Knights. Also won a state title and broke a record in 2021 for Lone Peak in the 4x200 meter while helping the Knights to 3 consecutive state track and field titles, and was part of a cross-country national championship, or national state championship as well at Lone Peak. So very accomplished athlete in herself. I'm sure she definitely wasn't in any way in her little brother's ear about coming to BYU, right? No, I'm just kidding. Probably enough. I'm sure there was some good-natured family heckling, but they're going to support each other no matter what. But they don't have to. Landon Goff committed to BYU, where he'll join his older sister Lexi in Provo, and I think will fit in pretty nicely in that Jay Hill defense as well. So there's your little bit of a football recruiting update for you. As always, here on the Rock and Roll Podcast, you can find all that coverage over at KSL.com. If you want a short link, sports.ksl.com, BYU.ksl.com. If you want to bookmark that in there. As always, give us a follow across your podcast platform of choice: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're on them all. And then some YouTube music as well. I know YouTube music, YouTube podcasts, that's becoming a thing right now. For those of you who like to listen on YouTube, hi, and welcome. But as always, leave us a rating, leave us a review. Tell us what you think about this podcast. You can be plenty honest. You can even criticize me a lot if you leave a 5-star review. Literally say anything you want, short of insulting my family. You can say whatever you want about me. I realize I have a tendency to sound like Elmo sometimes, so that's fine. Put it in there. Just make sure to leave a 5-star review with it, and you're perfectly fine. I can take it. I promise. Really, guys, I can take it. Let's get out of here with a little bit of basketball talk, where I caught up with BYU women's basketball coach Amber Whiting not too long after the Cougars' rivalry loss to in-state foe Utah over the weekend. That was their 4th straight loss in Big 12 play. Cougs will try to get back on track this Wednesday against Colorado, and so I caught up with Coach Whiting to kind of talk about ironing out some of those wrinkles, and maybe her connections with the Buffs, and in particular former Southern Utah head coach J.R. Payne, who's now in Boulder. But it just feels like every game Delaney's doing something a little bit different. What did you learn about her game last week, and maybe specifically on Saturday? That was there anything that kind of jumped out to you that you were like, okay, she's progressing really well in this kind of area?
I think she's reading the ices better offensively, like to be able to come off to shoot, like, or attack, right? Um, we're still working on other stuff with her because I mean, some of we can't have, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, she knows that. And so there's a level of, as a freshman, you give him so much rain, but now we're this much through the season, like, can't keep having the same mistakes anymore. That's got to be gone. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, we're just working every day.
It seems like her and Amari are getting a lot more comfortable playing with each other with every passing game, and I guess that's kind of to be expected with a freshman like D. But what's sort of their chemistry sort of developing into, I guess, kind of their role one with another? Because it feels like Amari had one of her better games on Saturday than maybe she's had in a couple of them.
Yeah, she started conference really strong, and then she had that flu game against Kansas State, and that was awful. And then just I don't know, basketball's a rhythm, kind of got, you know what I mean? And then Iowa State, she was just like everything was, and I'm like, just settle down, right? And so this last game, like realistically, we knew we needed Amari to guard Neepkins. Like we knew we had to have that. And so, and I know how Utah dogs the point guard, right? So in order to do both sides, so we just split it and made D do that. So we got to be better at finding a balance of like, you know, who's going to bring it, who's not, just in transition. If they're on your side, just get the outlet and go. So then it kind of balances out throughout the game. Um, yeah, and just we're just working on that with those two, but they obviously play really well off each other and they do a good job, like, you know, I mean, trying to figure out what each other's strengths is, and so we have as a staff have to put them into their spots.
Um, I did also want to just ask you one or two questions about Colorado, kind of what you see out of them. They're a team they're playing as well as anybody in the Big 12 right now. I gotta imagine they come in to Provo with a lot of confidence after a top 10 win for them, with a little bit of an asterisk, some caveats, obviously. K-State missing probably their best player, I think it's fair to say, in Yoki right now. But that's got to give them a lot of confidence coming into Provo, right?
Yeah. I mean, and coming in for sure, but hopefully Utah can be a stepping stone for us, and like what that was like the first more complete games that we've played. We always are missing like a quarter here or there or so, you know what I mean, a stretch. And so feeling hopefully that can come together. But yeah, I mean, they still have to come here. It's going to be a road game for them. So, you know, they play a different style than Utah plays, and they do a lot of like split cuts, back cuts, like things like that. So, you know, where Utah we could stay with, this one we're gonna have to switch a lot. So that makes me, you know, reverting back, it makes me a little bit nervous with that kind of stuff. But all in all, like everybody plays different, right? Like, I mean, in the Big 12 across the board. Like you can't go, like you'll be lucky to get a team back to back that plays similar. And so we just have to adjust and move on.
Yeah. What is that kind of the number one thing that jumps out to them, is just their split cuts and kind of the style of offense there?
Their elbow catches when they like to, you know, they have a really active big. She's really bouncy. She's really good. And also, they are really balanced with their guards and their shooting prowess, right? And especially Fordman. So it's like, you know, if we can't just stay on her. That way, when we get the splits action happen, we're gonna just get beat. And so we have to everyone has to do a better job of guarding.
Sure. It's been a minute since she's been here, but J.R. Payne, their coach, obviously she got pretty tight connections to this state, spent a lot of time at Southern Utah, and that sort of thing. So I've sort of liked to follow her career over the last couple of years. Bless you. Um, but did you ever come across JR, whether it was in a previous life, on the recruiting trail, anything like that? Like, did you ever get to know her at all? Got any kind of those sort of connections, I guess?
Yeah, we've recruited a lot of the same kids, so we sit in on some of the same games together and just talk. She's always really good for me, like, because she's from like the Kelly tree, right? Like, I mean, they just always really good at checking in on their people, and so I have nothing but respect for JR, 100%.
We go along like a cougar tail. Defense hitting hard like some seashells. Getting to the green, I ain't talking kale. Boy, that team up north, man, but oh well. Player. We getting jiggy with that boy Cosmo. We granting kids wishes like that boy Cosmo. They steady hating on us, but we who they watch though.